Hello everybody, this is David. Welcome back to my channel. Well, this video is the next in our series, The Christian Ethic in the 21st Century. In the last two videos we've been looking at a new system of ethics, you could say modern ethics, a system of ethics that came about in the 1960s to challenge the 2,000-year-old Judeo-Christian ethic that our civilization is built upon. And it's called situation ethics, and we looked at various situations in the last video that the situation ethicist, the situationists presented us with. Let's continue. What are we then to say about all of this? The situationist claims that nothing is absolutely right and nothing is absolutely wrong. It all depends on the situation. Goodness and badness are not something intrinsic, but things that happen to actions in the doing. What are we to say about this? Well, firstly, we can begin with something which is a criticism, not so much of situation ethics as it is of Fletcher's presentation of it. The trouble is that by far the greater number of Fletcher's illustrations are drawn from the abnormal, the unusual, the extraordinary. I'm not very likely to be confronted with, for example, an Arab blood feud or a war situation in Eastern Germany. Now, it's much easier to agree that any extraordinary situations need extraordinary measures than to think that there are no laws for ordinary everyday life. Now, secondly, and this is a much more serious situation, situation ethics presents us with a terrifying degree of freedom. There we are in front of our situation and we have no prefabricated judgment. You, just you, have to make the right decision. Brunner has said that there is nowhere you can go, not even to the Sermon on the Mount and say, now I know what to do. There is no such thing as a ready-made decision. Now, of course, we know the things that experience has discovered and teaches, but we are left alone in complete freedom to apply them. There is no doubt that most people do not want to be continually confronted with the necessity of making decisions. They would rather have their decisions made for them. They would rather apply laws and principles to the situation. And it may well be that they are right. The right use of freedom in our relationships with others depends on love. If love is perfect, then freedom is a good thing. But if there is no love, or if there is not enough love, then freedom can become license. Freedom can become selfishness and even cruelty. If you leave a person without love to do as they like, then the damage that they can do is incalculable. Now, it may well be that neither I or any other person is at this stage ready for this lonely freedom which the situationist offers us. The situationist has a kind of phobia of law, but the lesson of experience is that we need a certain amount of law, being the kind of people that we are. Now, Aristotle had his doctrine of habituation. He argued that there is a time when it is not possible to give a child freedom. It's not that the child is bad, it is that at the stage of childhood, the child has not the wisdom or experience, the ability to take the long view and calculate consequences, which freedom demands. We have then at this stage to submit the child to a discipline, to law, to control, so that the child develops the habit of doing the right thing. For example, you only learn to play the flute by practicing playing the flute according to the laws of flute playing. You only learn to be good by practicing goodness under the discipline and sometimes even the punishment of the laws of goodness. There is a stage at which the child has to be habituated and even compelled into goodness. Only after he has reached the stage of habituation is it possible to trust him with freedom. By habituation we mean developing the habit. Now take the place of a game, for example, even football. It would become chaos if there were no rules. Now it may be that in some future sporting utopia it will be possible for example, for Celtic to play Rangers or for Arsenal to play Manchester United without a referee. But that stage has not yet come. The reign of law is still needed. Now, if all men were saints, then situation ethics would be the perfect ethics. John A.T. Robinson has called situation ethics, and I quote, "the only ethic for man come of age," end of quote. This is probably true, but man, humanity, has not yet come of age. Humanity, therefore, still needs the crutch and the protection of the law. If we insist that in every situation every person must make their own decision, then first of all we must make humanity morally and lovingly fit to make that decision. Otherwise we need the compulsion of law to make them do it. And the fact is that few of us have reached that stage. We still need the law. We still need to be told what to do, and sometimes even compelled to do it. Thirdly, the situationist points out again and again that in his view there is nothing which is intrinsically good or bad. Goodness and badness, as he puts it, are not properties. They are predicates. They are not inbuilt qualities. They happen to a thing in a given situation. Now, I am very doubtful if the distinction between goodness and badness can be just thrown away like that. Now, we may grant that Fletcher has shown that there can be situations in which a thing generally regarded as wrong could be the right thing to do, but that does not prove that it is good. There is a close analogy here with dangerous drugs, which a doctor may have to prescribe. When he prescribes these drugs, he does not pretend they are not poisons. Poisons they are, and poisons they remain. They have to be kept in a special cupboard and in a special container. They can only be used under the strictest safeguards. There are indeed occasions when the doctor will not prescribe them at all, because he is not certain that the patient has the strength of mind not to misuse them. Now, these things have a kind of inbuilt red light, and that red light is not taken away, for the dangerous drug is never called anything else but a poison. So there are certain things which on rare occasions may be used to serve a good end, but the red light should not be removed by calling them good things. They remain highly dangerous, and they should never be called or regarded as anything else. Now, personally, I think we can go further. I think there are things which can in no circumstances be right. To take but two examples, to start a young person in the name of experience on the experiments which can lead to drug addiction can never be right. To break up a family relationship in the name of so-called love can never be right. The right and wrong are not so easily eliminated. Now, fourthly, the situationist is likely to forget two things. Firstly, he is liable to forget what psychological age can do for abnormal conditions. Fletcher took instances of cures being affected by what the Christian would simply regard as committing adultery. For example, we quoted the play in The Rainmaker, in which the rainmaker deliberately seduces the farmer's daughter to save her, as he claimed, from being spinsterized. Now, this completely leaves out of the story the very real possibility of what we call sublimation. Sublimation is the process by which instinctive emotions are diverted from their original ends and redirected to purposes satisfying the individual and of value to the community. There is no need for repression with all its attendant evils. It is a perfectly normal thing for the force and the power and the surge that can flow through one instinct, for example the sex drive, to be sublimated in the service of another. A man or a woman may have no outlet for the instinct of sex, and time again that force of sex can be channeled into other channels and sublimated in the service of other things. There's many an unmarried woman who is very, very far from being a frustrated spinster, because she has found fullness of life in some other outlet. There is many a man who has had to do without marriage and who has sublimated his sex drive into other achievements and other service. We could speculate whether John Wesley would have been such a dynamic founder of a new church if he'd been happily married. He poured into the church what he might have kept within the limits of a home. They are cures and compensations for abnormal conditions which do not involve breaking what we have learned to call the moral law. And in the point of fact, these cures are far more effective. And above all, the situationist is liable to forget quite simply the grace of God. Unless Christianity is a total swindle, then it must make good its claims to make bad men good. To encourage people towards permissiveness is no real cure. To direct them to the grace of God is. When John Wesley entered on open-air preaching, and when he saw what the grace of God could do, he wrote to his brother Samuel, and I quote, "I will show you him who was a lion till then and is now a lamb, him that was a drunkard and is now exemplary sober, the warmonger that was, who now abhors the very garment spotted with the flesh." End of quote. These, said Wesley, are the arguments for and the proofs of the power of the grace of God, and that power is still as strong as ever. The situationist has taught us that we must indeed be flexible, that we must indeed look upon the problem of others not with self-righteousness but with sympathy, that we must not be legalists. But in spite of that, we still do well to remember that there are laws which we break at our peril. Now, in the background of our discussion of situation ethics, there has always been the idea of law. Sometimes, in fact, it has almost seemed that the idea of law and the idea of situation ethics formed a contrast and even an antithesis. I did say at one point that the situationists seem to have a phobia of the law. Now, before we leave this subject, we'll have a look at the conception of the law in general, so that if we do discard law, we may see what we are discarding. What then is law, and what does law do, or what is law intended to do for society? I'm going to leave the video here for that, and we'll come back in the next video to have a look at that, what the law is. So I want to thank you for joining me, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.